Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 52 of the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, as always, and I'm here today to talk about action. The episode title is going to be What Would Clarence Do? And we'll go over what that means and who the fuck Clarence is a little bit later. But today, it's really all about how action is the way to overcome fear. So when you feel fear in your body, a lot of times the obstacle is the way. Fear being the obstacle, and you got to feel the fear, find courage, and do it anyways. And I've just noticed myself in the past year or so, just doing things, right? So 52 episodes of this podcast in, and that's an entire year. I mean, that's 52 weeks. I do this podcast weekly on Thursdays, mostly. And when I set up to do the podcast, I'm not always 100% stoked on doing it. I feel maybe a little self-conscious, maybe like I don't have something important to say today. But I get in the batter's box and take my at bat, regardless of what the outcome might be. And there's been some episodes that I finished and thought, I don't know if that one's helpful or useful, or that's kind of embarrassing. Maybe I revealed a little too much. All kinds of feelings of inadequacy pop up after. But I know the only way I'm going to get better at podcasting, public speaking, being vulnerable, sharing thoughts is just by doing it. And I have no idea. I mean, I can go in and look at how many people have listened to the podcast on different platforms, and the number seems to be going up. Could just be bots. I don't know. But it ultimately, I think, is a good thing for my development, this action. Just doing the work, learning what I like, learning my creative process. Just being in school, I'm in a massive period of growth. And speaking of school, I had some practicals this week. Spent my final day in the cadaver lab, so no more gross anatomy in the cadaver lab, using surgical techniques to find structures. Kind of a crazy experience overall. But the other practical, most recent one I took was upper extremity adjusting. So shoulders, elbows, wrists, hand. And through the process of that practical, it's been about a year that I've been in chiropractic school in Dallas physically. I've been doing chiropractic school a little bit longer than a year. But this is kind of the end of the science study, anatomy, physiology, microbiology, kind of studying the facts and moving on to more diagnostic, clinical skills and adjusting, of course. But I've been in a handful of adjusting and identification classes, and I used to go into those practicals being super nervous and super anxious. I would feel my body having like a physical reaction. Hands get kind of clammy, a little cold, kind of shaky, and you're just nervous because you don't trust yourself. You know that you know where different landmarks are in the body. You know the moves. You studied, and yet somehow when you get put under a timer and it's kind of an official thing, you can kind of fold a little bit. And a lot of it is mental. Like, my brain knows what to do. I just got to be calm enough to access the information and then act on it and take my time and do it properly. And what was cool was this upper extremity practical. I walked in. I felt mostly comfortable. with all of the material. But as soon as I got my sheet, they give you one shoulder, one elbow, one wrist, and then one hand adjustment to do, and you get 10 minutes to roll through it. And as soon as I saw my sheet with the 4 adjustments on it, I kind of blacked out and, performed all 4 movements in about 3 minutes and 30 seconds, which is like half the time the first practical took me. I feel like I took my time a lot more on that first practical. This one, it felt like it was just starting to flow out of me. So what that tells me is that I practiced enough. It's starting to become second nature. My doctor presence, so introducing myself to the patient, telling them what we're going to be doing, asking them to guard different areas, sensitive areas of their body when I'm moving into, say, an armpit or elbow joint. That stuff is starting to be automatic. It's not something where I have a checklist in my head that I'm running through. And really, same goes for the podcast. When I start the podcast, I know, I got my headphones, I got my microphone, I got my power source, I got the recorder, the micro SD card where I can store the data and transfer it to my computer later. And I have my process and I know what I'm doing. And now at this point, I've done it over 52 times because I recorded a couple that never got posted or were just audio was lost or whatever it may be. And even after the after process, I pull the SD card out, pop the file on my computer, take it from mono to stereo, go into rss.com and upload it. And honestly, it's smooth sailing, So whether it was the practical or it's the podcast or really, anything I do, it's clear that now, I think weightlifting is another example. I don't want to just bury you in examples, but when I touch a barbell, I know what to do. And as I'm warming up, I can feel the sensations in my body, and I know, okay, I need more weight, more reps, less reps. I need to heat my body up more. Maybe I'm not feeling so good today, so maybe just keep an eye on, I know what my goal is in the gym, and I'm willing to relinquish that if my nervous system's not agreeing. There's obviously something affecting my body, so just do what you can and move on. It's all just execution and then honest reflection. And the honesty, it's really easy to trick yourself. It's easy to second guess. But the more just straightforward you are with your action, and the more, kind of bluntly honest you are with yourself in terms of how it went, you just whittle yourself down and you hone yourself into this machine that can do this task over and over and over. So as I step into this next clinical phase of school, that practical, I got an A on it, and it made me feel really confident that as we get into even more sensitive areas, so extremities are relatively low consequence. You can hurt someone's, joints in their body for sure. But the extremity adjustments are a little bit more gentle, and you have a little bit more control, and they're less vital. So if I'm adjusting someone's neck, that's where all their respiratory centers are, important veins and arteries. Just a lot more kind of at stake when you're adjusting the spine. So they kind of do this on purpose. They get you into the extremities to kind of, get you into that doctor space to where the way I feel, which is confident about my practical, so that when I get nervous about adjusting a sensitive area of the body, and kind of doing the work of a real chiropractor, I'll be able to at least be calm about the fact that I feel like a doctor. So I'm not just completely insecure. I'm only partially insecure, and I can again deal with that manageable fear and overcome it and get to the point where I feel good adjusting people, the way I will be doing every day in my future profession. So I want to talk about a process that I honestly, it's such a simple idea that I never thought about just stating it simply this way. And I'll say the last part of it, it's a 4-step process. The last part of it's probably the hardest thing for me. So that may be another reason I've avoided really like kind of putting this into words and living it. But back to what would Clarence do? So Clarence is Dr. Clarence Gonstead. Very lightly, he is a chiropractor. He once upon a time had rheumatoid arthritis. He was an older gentleman like myself, like 30s or 40s maybe. Not the typical age chiropractors appear. Kind of fresh out of undergrad, but he had rheumatoid arthritis and tried everything, couldn't get relief. His hands were killing him, and he went to a chiropractor, got adjusted, and through chiropractic care, his arthritis cleared up. So his symptoms, his pain, his stiff joints and like loss of ability to do like daily activities went away. So much so that he decided he wanted to use his hands to become a chiropractor. So he went to Palmer, which is kind of the main school, was developed in Iowa, still in Iowa, and has little branches all over the country these days. He went to Palmer, and his background was in structural engineering. So he took the art of chiropractic and the science of structural engineering and cadavers, like I mentioned earlier, and he basically developed a theory of chiropractic that's a little bit different than some of the others. And there's several different styles of chiropractic, but this one, in a nutshell, focuses a lot on the discs between the vertebrae. So chiropractors use the bones, the vertebrae, to we move them so that the nerves become unimpinged. So if you have a nerve that's impinged, it can affect the signals going to the area of your body, and by giving them space, you allow those signals to flow better, and your body can heal itself and perform better. That's chiropractic in a nutshell. What Gonstead says is that the most important factor is that disc spacing. So making sure you have nice thick discs in between your bones, that gives the nerves adequate space. Whereas other sections of chiropractic are not necessarily primarily focused on the disc. They're focused on several factors. So I grew up going to a Gonstead chiropractor and didn't know the difference. I've been to a lot of chiropractors, didn't know the difference. And there's been non-Gonstead chiropractors that have helped me, but I will say the one that helped me the most took x-rays on every patient, and that's a very Gonstead thing to do. There's a lot of chiropractors won't take x-rays, will just adjust, and you'll get benefits, but the benefits are sort of random. Whereas a Gonstead chiropractor will use x-ray, he'll use a special thermometer on your spine that shows where nerves are hot, basically. So the temperature goes up, that means there's like swelling and inflammation, which means that thing's probably getting clamped down on, and that's an area we should pay attention to. And along with just like static palpation, so using your fingers to feel the spine and feel where different things are out of line, and then also using your hands, motion palpation, to move the spine and feel how the spine moves and how the joints articulate. Those 4 things can give you a pretty clear picture of where the real problem child is. So good Gonstead chiropractic might even only adjust one joint. You only adjust where you think the true issues are. A lot of issues in the spine can be compensations, kind of like Jenga. If you pull a block out from the bottom, the whole thing can collapse. So you kind of look below at the lowest one and try to fix it from there. And it's a little bit of trial and error. So you do that process and you see how the patient responds. And then if it doesn't work, you come back, you run the process again, and you find kind of the next potential problem child and let it rip. And after a few sessions, you should be able to locate the one that's causing the problems, and most of the symptoms should eventually go away. Like the body will heal itself after you've removed the interference. But the key thing that Gonstead used to keep himself going was just a simple 4-step process. So first is find the problem. The second is accept the problem. The third is fix the problem. And the fourth is leave it alone. And you can imagine which one of those is my issue. So I think chiropractic school is set up in a way that kind of works like this, but we forget this most simple kind of 4-step process, and then kind of giving ourselves space to be wrong. Like, you're not going to be right unless you open yourself up to maybe being wrong. Like, you gotta, again, find the problem. And this first 3 or 4 trimesters of school is learning scientific principles and information that allow you to diagnose what could be going on. So finding the problem means that you have to have skills and knowledge of, okay, this person has cardiopulmonary issues. They have pain radiating down their arms. I'm going to be looking upper thoracic and lower neck. And then you do an x-ray and you do the temperature gauge and you feel around. And like after that, you're going to have a pretty good idea. Like even without touching a patient, you're going to have a pretty good idea of where the issues are, and then you can kind of confirm it. So find it. Then the biggest thing is, step 2 is accepting. So once again, like opening yourself up to being wrong is crucial, because you can't be right unless, you're never going to know 100% if you're right or not before you perform the adjustment. But again, we can use all of the context clues and all of our scientific knowledge to really narrow it down so we can get pretty damn close. And the human body, again, it like works in mysteries. There's times where you could adjust someone's lower back and it fixes their neck, and vice versa. And you adjust their mid back and everything's better. You might adjust someone and it might get worse. So you got to be okay with whatever outcome, and just know that your expertise is going to put you in a good spot to have a successful outcome. It's never going to be 100% perfect. And Dr. Gonstead was famous for, if a patient got worse, he would basically work with them, without making them pay until it resolved itself. Because, you want to see improvement, appointment to appointment, and he adjusted so many thousands of people that, again, it's the law of averages. There's going to be some adverse outcomes at some point. Somebody's going to not respond well, and if they're willing, you can keep working with them and get it right. Because then the law of averages also works in that if I get it wrong once, odds of getting it right the next time are even better, because I have even more information to make a better decision. So remember, find the problem, accept the problem. So accepting what the problem is crucial. And then 3 is fixing the problem. So fixing the problem entails, once again, using our clinical skills. So we've already used our scientific skills and our diagnostic skills. Now we need clinical skills to actually move the bones back in place. Let the discs do their job, create space in those joints so that your nerves can flow freely. And that one's relatively simple. And again, it's like another thing where the more comfortable you get as a practitioner and like finding and accepting and then adjusting, like that's just 1, 2, 3, bang, bang, bang. And then the fourth and final is leave it alone. And leaving it alone, for me, probably for many people, is one of the most difficult things to do. I'm someone that I'm kind of a fixer, so I want to, if something's broken, I want to fix it right away. I know, I kind of justify this by saying that life is short. We only have a finite amount of time, so if there's something that you love, you shouldn't waste any time. You should get to it, because you just don't know how much time you have. And I think this is a valid approach and a valid stance, but the problem I get into is not everyone feels that way. Not everyone kind of respects that, the finality of life, to the degree that I do. And that's okay. Sometimes people have other priorities. And part of leaving it alone is accepting that, other people have differences of opinion. And that's difficult for me because I get excited. I feel like in life I'm kind of a seeker and a fixer. So I like to find problems. I like to fix them. And I like to share that with people. I don't want people to suffer in life, and life is suffering. I want to, as a healer, as someone who's trying to become a chiropractor, I want to share healing with people, and I want them to accept it, and I want them to fix it, and I want them to leave it alone with me. Hey, let's all do this together and enjoy a better life. And I think there's an element of life. I've said before a lot on the podcast, life is 50% good, 50% bad. And you couldn't have good without the opposite. So you can't have people with peace and joy without some people struggling. And I think at any point, though, you can choose, through your actions, if you want to struggle or if you want to choose kind of joy and peace. And struggling is somewhat necessary to move forward, to grow. You got to put yourself, the seed gets pushed deep into the soil before it can sprout up and, kind of look at the sun. So there's an element to suffering that is helpful. But for me, it's just hard for me to watch people go through it. And the series of books that I want to write are basically, it's just an advice column to myself in a lot of ways. And the big overarching theme of it is you can invite people to join you in cool things you've experienced and things that you're doing, but it's up to them if they take you up on it. You can't make them do it. And sometimes they're going to choose it. Maybe even, you have a perspective that affords you, some clarity on like what might be best for them. And, again, with certain experiences and expertise in life, just like chiropractic skills or diagnostic skills or whatever it may be, I got it narrowed down pretty good to, above 90% confidence that like, hey, if we do this, good things are going to happen. Let's do this together. And there's always going to be a little bit of doubt, and that little bit of doubt in someone's mind can creep in and cause them to not join you. There's all kinds of reasons why they might not join you, and you, almost like an initial problem in itself, same thing. You find a person, you accept where they are. You offer a solution. You may not be able to fix them, but you can offer the fix to them, and then you got to leave it alone. It's like almost the same process. It's like a inception of the Gonstead method, because you're already doing it for a problem that exists, and then now the person who's not a problem. Like, people are not problems. We can only come together to fix them together. But that person, it's again the same process, and you got to leave it alone. You got to give the invitation and then give the space for a yes or a no to happen. And that's just tough. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just really tough because you obviously want the best for yourself. You want the best for that person, and you think you know what's best, but you don't really know. And you have to give space for that person to be right. You have to give that space for that person to make their own choice. And then part of leaving it alone is just letting things play out. And the best way to know if you're right or not, and to know if it's, things are, you kind of got the right thing in your head, the right methods you're using, and, it's just the outcomes. Like, are you thriving in life? Are you happy? Are you blissful? And if you're not, and that's your goal, then you got to reassess and go back through the process. And again, like, finding the issue is when you make a decision and you go through the process and you leave it alone and then you observe, you might find like, hey, I made the wrong decision. And it's hard to admit that you were wrong. But it's the only way to find out. So it's constant scientific method of just experimenting, and you can't ever prove anything right, but you can absolutely be wrong. And being wrong is actually a little bit better because that's something that is not going to be right. So that's just cross that one off the list, try another combination, and then go through the process again. Find it, accept it, do something, leave it alone. So now I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. This episode's getting close to 30 minutes, and I want to keep all of them under that. So that's all I have to say about Dr. Clarence Gonstead and what he would do. I feel like he's just a helpful mental model for people who are trying to get shit done in the world and also sleep at night. So I hope this was helpful. Think about that model, what you think you can do in your life, and then how can you leave it alone, and how you can reassess and go through the process again. So until next time, this is Blaine. See y'all next time.